Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Well, Phil, why don't we start this week's pod with an update from last week's show from a friend of the pod, Robert Forrester, CEO of Virtue. Because if you recall, we were talking about Virtue acquiring Honda Exeter from Hendy, and I said that would make Virtue the biggest Honda partner in the UK. And Robert got in touch and said, yeah, that is correct, but we're also the biggest Honda partner in Europe and have been for the last 10 years. So that told us, didn't it?
Yes, I was corrected. And within that, I think there was also a reference to the Uber story as well.
Yes.
In terms of, there's a little bit of detail within the Uber story around what they're doing and subsidising and working on with BYD, as well as Tesla and others in that Uber space. So yeah, a couple of updates on that one, but we were technically right, I think, weren't we? We just referenced UK really, yes, rather than Europe.
Yeah, we were technically correct on the Honda front, and that Uber story, which was an interesting one from the Mail Online, but the Mail Online really went in on there was 100,000 or so driverless Ubers going global, but I think Robert pointed out that they're not all going to be driverless.
No. So yeah, but again, please, if there is anything that we do incorrectly quote, then please do feel free to drop us a note. We can't get everything right all of the time, but yeah, we're technically right with that one. But we'll get you back on at some point, Robert, because I know there's a lot happened since we last caught up. So let's start to think about scheduling another catch up with you in the coming months. But something a little bit that isn't far off, only around the corner now. Around the corner in terms of time, and not necessarily around the corner for location, Curtis. But
it is for me.
It is for you, yeah.
It is for me, definitely.
You've got your Learjet ready to fly
yes.
in there. So we've got the British Motor Show, which is, as I say there, that's down at Farnborough International Exhibition Centre. And that's between the 15th and 18th of August. And it is being sponsored by Motors this year. And they have got a dedicated dealer showcase zone. So if you are heading on down there, then please do check it out, because it's going to be featuring people such as Arnold Clark's, CASA, SM Specialist Cars and EV experts, all exhibiting and selling used cars at the event. And one note in this is there's going to be a lot of focus on the affordable family models, SUVs, EVs and hybrids, all ranging from £15,000. So if you are heading anywhere near Farnborough, if you're going to the event, then please do check out the dedicated dealer showcase zone of which Motors are sponsoring.
Yeah, and I'll be there on Thursday on the first day of the show. So if you are there and you want to meet up, have a coffee, just give me a shout. You know where to find me on LinkedIn. So looking forward to that, because as you say, it's pretty much on my doorstep. So just a short hop around the M25, I hope.
It is. And another deadline for you and a date for your diary is the 16th of August. That's Friday the 16th of August, and that's that the Motor Trader Awards entry deadline is coming up. So if you haven't got your entries in already, then please do head over to the Motor Trader website. You'll find the relevant links and documentation there to submit your entries for this year's awards. So that's the deadline is Friday the 16th of August.
And after this week's midweek break, we'll have an extract from our interview with Perran Moon MP, former marketing director for Auto Trader, Mannheim and Believe, now Labour MP for Redruth, Camborne, Hale in Cornwall. It's a fascinating interview, and as I say, we've got a short extract, but stay tuned for that, and do check out the full interview on your podcast feed.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
And just a little bit more about our supplier specials. Companies already featured include Check Quick and AutoChat. So if you'd like us to profile your business, then just get in touch with Philip or myself. We're both on LinkedIn, so do contact us there. So on with the headlines. So headlines this week come from Car Dealer, AM and Motor Trader, starting with new car registrations up in July, marking 24 consecutive months of growth, but market is still driven by fleet as retail drops once again. Van registrations drop in July, but market remains at a 3-year high. Used car supermarkets increase their stocks in July as buyers prioritise affordability. Staying with used cars, the used car sales rise in Q2. We look at the latest SMMT stats on that. And we'll finish this week with a look at the Auto Express Car Owners Poll, which reviews the nation's favourite and least favourite car brands.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
So starting this week with AM Online, and the headline there is Weakening Retail and EV Market Overriding Concern, despite new car market growth. So it's it's an intriguing one, this, because this is a look at the new car registration figures for July from the SMMT, which on the surface look fairly positive because it is showing market growth. The market has now been growing for 24 consecutive months. The new market in July rose by 2.5%, and the increase over the course of the year is actually 5.5%. So both encouraging, but as the story points out, fleets are continuing to boost those figures. And retail is actually down. So just looking at the split, retail for the month was down 11%, which means that in the year to date, it's actually down just under 12%. Fleet, meanwhile, was up 13% for the month of July and is up 21% for the year to date. And I don't know about you, Phil, but I think maybe from now on we put some inverted commas around the word fleet, because fleet, it isn't just company cars, it's the leasing companies, the contract hire companies, Motability, I think salary sacrifice schemes as well. And that's really where the new car sales, the new registrations are being driven now, as the retail market is very, very subdued to the point of being suppressed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you when you talk about fleet in the social space, and people do say, let's not forget that benefit in kind market, that company car marketplace that that does get tagged into that fleet, and there's a little bit that goes in business, and anybody that has operated in the sector knows around the coding from the manufacturers and where they want registrations to appear against a particular code that triggers certain incentives and bonuses. But yeah, I think you're right there. I think this is definitely not positive in many ways. I mean, it's dangerous that the fleet market is underpinning the growth in the new car market. We know that from previous stories and previous conversations, EV is being very much underpinned within that fleet sector as well in terms of that growth. But EV isn't really moving massively at the minute. I mean, look at the fuel type shares for July and for the year to date. You've got BEV there, the battery electric vehicle sector that has got an 18.8% change year on year, but only from sort of 23,000 up to just over 27,000. Taking a market share to 18.5%, and that's up from 16% for the same month of July last year. But the year to date still remains less than 17% market share, down at 16.8, and it's only moved up from 16.1 for that same period last year. So not a big shift in terms of battery electric vehicle share year on year over the first sort of 7 months of 2024 there. So I think when we look at that and what's been called out, it's EV is still not happening in general across the marketplace.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Philip, because we've just got 5 months of the year left now. The target, the ZEV mandate target, is 22%. So we're still a long way adrift from that. As you say, market share in year to date is 18.5%. So I think this has actually prompted the SMMT to reforecast downwards their expectation for the year. So the new forecast is 1.96 million units for 2024, with battery electric vehicles anticipated to make up a share of 18.5%. So the SMMT doesn't think that the year to date is actually going to shift much, certainly not going to shift upwards between now and the end of the year. And that's actually down from, I think, earlier on in the year that they were anticipating the market to the BEV share of the market. I think they started off, their first forecast for the year was 21%, so just 1% shy of the 22% needed under ZEV mandate. But that subsequently dropped to 19.8% as a forecast, and now, as I say, 18.5%. So we will be seeing a lot of activity around OEMs addressing that figure and trying to get as close to the ZEV mandate target as possible. And that will continue to fuel what we're seeing in terms of uptake within fleet, because that is being driven mostly by BEVs.
Yeah, I mean, it's the money on the table at the minute, the incentives, the deals. There's a lot of disparity. You only need to look at some of the leasing websites to see some of that disparity now in terms of how cheap and how good value you can get into a new battery electric vehicle because of the amount of money that's on the table. But heading back to the AM report release, there's a few comments in this that kind of sum it all up. That there's comment there that fleet sector sustaining new car registration growth. Sue Robinson from the FDA saying the urgent need to stimulate private BEV market is needed there. So kind of summing it up there, that there's a lot to do, and we know that at the minute there's nothing kind of on the table within the government to be able to really throw any money at this requirement to stimulate this new car challenges for the EV. That it's all being done potentially, and maybe by a stick rather than a carrot at the minute, should we say? But yeah, I think this will start to intensify, as you say there, Curtis, as we move through the year.
Yeah, definitely. And before we look at the van registrations for the month, you've got some figures from Europe, haven't you, in terms of registrations?
Yeah, just to put sort of context across the market there, France is down 2.3%, so not a bad performance for July over there in France at 126,000 registrations. Germany, not dissimilar, at 2.1% down at 238,000 registrations. Spain up in Spain to 3.4% to 84,000 registrations. I haven't got Italy to hand there, but it's kind of seems to be stabilising across Europe. A little bit sort of small movements up and down compared to the 2.5% that the UK experienced.
And moving on to Motor Trader, the headline there is dealer van sales dip in July, but year-to-date market is robust. So this is reports based on the latest SMMT stats, which show that the LCV registrations fell 8.5% in July, with just under 25,000 units registered. The performance, it's worth noting this, is in comparison to a particularly strong July in 2023. And we were saying the same last month, actually, because June registrations were down for LCVs. But again, that was against a very strong market in June 2023. So LCV registrations down 8.5% for the month, with the market up 2.7% in the year to date. So that's really the key. So it's been down now for 2 months, but year to date it is up.
Yeah, and you're looking at the BEV, a little bit more challenging, should we say, within the LCV sector. And I know we talked about it, didn't we, on last week's podcast, where the imminent reversal of the 2035 ICE ban back to 2030, but that was only intimated for cars, and LCV wasn't in that conversation. But again, BEVs for the commercial vehicle sector in the sub 3.5 ton, dropping 8.1% year on year. So still a drop there, taking a 5.5% share of the market. For the 3.5 to 4.25 ton, the rigids within that, accounting for 0.2%. But if you look at that 3.5 ton year to date for that BEV market, still at sort of 4.8% year to date, and that's down from 5.2% share last year. So the van sector has actually dropped share for the battery electric vehicles, and now accounting year to date up until the end of July for 4.8% share of the market, and they need to achieve 10% if you took it as pure black and white in terms of that achievement. So still a problem for cars, but looks like there's a bigger problem coming for the LCV sector as we get through the year as well.
Yeah, so that's a roundup of the new car and van registrations for July. So next story comes from Car Dealer, and it is looking very much at used car trends, used car retail trends over the course of July. The headline there is used car supermarkets enjoy strong July as buyers prioritise affordability. So this is based on the latest market view from Motors, which I had sight of the data because I helped put together the press release for this. And there are some interesting trends here around car supermarkets, because they seem to be increasing stock levels. So the sector has now increased its stock levels in every month since March of this year, with the average stock per site now sitting at 274 units. The figure is actually up month on month from 252 units in June, but remains 10% down on the same point last year, when supermarkets were stocking an average of 303 units. And overall, dealer inventories averaged 53 units over the course of July, up from 51 in June, and just slightly down on where they were 12 months ago at 54 units.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much the changes in terms of you look at the Sytner supermarket operation closing several of their sites, and moving some of the remaining ones into the Sytner Selects. We talked last week, didn't we, about the Trade Centre UK shutting a site to support the bigger sites either side of it. And it kind of that landscape and makeup of that supermarket, how's that starting to play through in terms of the number of supermarkets now in the UK, against that overall stock level, as these supermarkets continue to make sure that they have those healthy stock levels, should we say, in this marketplace.
Yeah, and I guess it also follows on from the report just a couple of weeks ago from Motorpoint on how they've started this year. Their first quarter got off to a strong start after what was a difficult year last year. So some encouraging signs there, and it'll be interesting to just track how the supermarket sector performs for the rest of this year, because as you say, there's a lot of change going on there.
There is there, yeah, and going back to the topic of EVs, the saying that proportion of used EVs stocked by dealers increased from 3% in June to 5% in July. Hybrids actually increased from 7% up to 9%. Petrol down from 54% down to 52%. I suspect that will be similar to what we've seen in diesel as well, down from 36% to 34%. That's probably driven by availability of products within the petrol and diesel sector, and obviously supporting this transition to stocking those EVs and hybrids as well, moving as they become a more prevalent product for the retail sector.
Yeah, and commenting on the findings, Lucy Tugby, Marketing Director at Motors, said July was a further stable month for the used car market in terms of supply and demand. And in terms of car supermarkets, she says that they made the most of a succession of book drops in the wholesale market to continue to replenish stocks and build in some margin. So the full report, the full market view, is available online at Motors, and we'll put a link to it on the newsletter that goes out Monday morning. So moving on, after the break, we're back with an extract from our interview with industry stalwart turned MP, Perran Moon.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
Just thinking about, I mean, you're talking through there the short period of time and how quickly you're moving, but I know that when we initially got in contact, you'd already asked your first question in the house, but from chatting pre-recording, you've actually asked further questions within the house, and I know the first one will resonate with listeners of today's podcast, because it's it's talking about that the bureaucracy around the barriers and the rollout of EV charging network. I mean, do you want to talk through, obviously, how this connects with what you did previously as you role at Believe and the questions that you've been raising already within the House?
Yeah, I think within Westminster, there's a requirement to really understand a little bit more about the challenges we have with more broadly within the automotive industry, but specifically from my perspective within the EV charging industry, because as I see it, based on my experience, there are some bureaucratic hurdles that we've put in place that are limiting the speed and scale with which we can roll out EV charging, public access EV charging infrastructure. And the way that local authorities are being pushed down a particular route to be able to access the charging they need on the ground, I don't think is as good as it could be. And I'm really keen to talk to the powers that be about that, and to clear some of the hurdles and some of the barriers, so that we can get EV. If you build it, they will come. If we don't have EV infrastructure, a comprehensive national network of electric vehicle charging infrastructure, the right speeds in the right car parks at the right streets, people will not transition to EVs as quickly as we would like them to. And it is a barrier, and it is a question that we have to get the network in place. Yes, there'll be people who are able to have an EV charger, a home charging EV charge point, which is absolutely fine. But we have to have the national public access network, and it's not moving fast enough at the moment.
Obviously, this debate has already been, in the House and on that subject. And how did it go? I mean, do you feel that it's moving forward? People are listening to the challenges.
Well, Philip, it's very early days at the minute, and we as I say, we've had 1,000,000,001 other things to do. I'm hopeful that when I get back in September, I will be able to sit down with ministers and talk, just share my experience, frankly, of what is happening on the ground, and encourage them to go and speak to other people in the sector. And just, it's not, I'm just one voice, but to make sure that they're getting a holistic view of why it is taking so long for local authorities to go to market, to identify the resources they need, and to get EV charging installed on street and in car parks. Because, as I say, it's not moving fast enough at the moment. There are hurdles that I think that local authorities have to jump through, which are unnecessary. There is a lack of resource because it's a relatively new industry, and you're asking local authorities to administer a process that they've never had to administer before. Inevitably, when you mention, and I was a councillor myself, like you, Philip, when you mention infrastructure to a local authority, they instantly think of public access, public funding, and in the scenario of EV infrastructure, the bottom line is you don't need public funding to install the charge point networks that we need in the UK. There is private capital out there, ready, willing, and able to move this forward. And we're not releasing that. We're not making it easy for local authorities to work with the private sector to get the EV infrastructure that we need so that their residents can transition as quickly as possible away from petrol and diesel vehicles. We're making it more difficult. And I want to be part of the conversation that at least looks at why it is so difficult and clears some of those barriers so that we can just get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, what great insight within government now. And it's worth pointing out that until winning his seat at the general election in July, Perran was head of marketing at Believe, which is the charging infrastructure rollout company. So he knows all about the need to cut that bureaucracy and make it easier for the private sector to invest in building what is a much needed charging infrastructure.
Yeah, no, I think it obviously what he's talking about there resonates to our earlier stories around this transition and some of the barriers that are still there, and it's just so great to hear somebody now that is in government as an MP that is already within a very short period of time who is he is acting on behalf of the automotive sector. He's very clearly from, he's got that industry background and knowledge that he can install within central government, which is kind of fairly fresh now in this new government, isn't it? So hopefully we'll keep in touch with Perran. I certainly will, and where we can keep those conversations going to help move this needle forward. But I think if you've not listened to the full interview there with Perran, it is on your podcast feed. It was shared on the podcast last Monday morning. Great interview. A little bit of background of what Perran's done, how he got to where he got to, why he became an MP, why he's decided to make this move. But a great chat with Perran in what is a very busy time for him as well.
Yeah, definitely. So our thanks to Perran for spending the time with us. And you're right, it is worth checking out the full interview because he does have a lot to say about the role of car dealers in not just the sector, but in the economy, UK economy overall. So do check that out. So moving on with the headlines, the next one's from AM Online. And you know what, Phil, we're staying with EVs, we're staying with used cars because the headline is EVs driving surge in UK used car sales, says SMMT. So this is the latest quarterly used car transaction figures from the SMMT, which came out during the week. And they showed that 1.96 million transactions took place in the second quarter, which was an uplift of 7.2% on the same period last year. So some encouraging news there for the used car market. And so that second quarter rise helped drive a 6.8% increase in the year-to-date figure for 2024. So that's pushed it up to 3.93 million units.
Yeah, and positively, you know, if you look at each of the months within the quarter, we were up straight right across all of the months year on year. For the month of the April, May, and June. Just to make sure I get my months correct in that quarter, Curtis.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, again, we're up compared to the pre-pandemic averages as well. So marginally up by 2.1% compared to the pre-pandemic quarterly average. So optimistic news that, you know, although, you know, whatever's going on in the new car market that we've been talking about and the challenges there, as we get through the used cars, there's still transacting, there's still activity within that used car marketplace. And even, you know, referring back to the motors market view just previously, yes, profiles are changing, fuel types are changing, but, you know, the story in AM does pick up the positivity around the EV marketplace, helping to support this growth in used car transactions.
Yeah, definitely. And within the figures, because they do actually look at EVs, so used battery electric EVs recorded their highest ever market share at 2.4%. So that's still very, very low, but it is moving in the right direction. But that was actually up 52.6%. So, as I say, moving in the right direction. Still a long, long way to go, though.
Yeah, let's say there's quite a bit to go, but as you say, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what we do finish on this year. I were reasonably accurate in my Q2 forecast.
I thought you were going to mention that. Funnily enough,
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
A little, yeah, we were there. We're about 96%, I think, of accuracy. So I'll take that. Bearing in mind, you know, it's the used one is always a little bit more challenging. But, you know, optimistically, you know, just short of 4 million used car transactions for the year so far at this half-year point, which really puts us on track for, you know, breaking that 7.3, 7.4 million for the year as things start to play out in that new car market. So optimistic there for, again, further growth in terms of the used car transactions for this year.
So, final story for this week comes from Car Dealer, and the headline is Subaru is voted best car brand by owners as buyers deliver brutal verdict on MG. So, spoiler alert there, Subaru are at the top, MG are at the bottom. So, this is the annual poll carried out by Auto Express, and what they do is they poll the views of car owners about the brand of car that they own. And you know, the poll does cover thousands of new car buyers, and very much based on their experiences of living with the vehicles that they own. And the survey covers 32 brands. It is substantial, and firms are ranked in 10 different categories, including running costs, ride and handling value, things like infotainment, exterior design, before an overall score is calculated, which shall I take you through the top 10?
Please
Philip?
do. Because I think someone might be shocked at that second position as well.
Yes, yeah, and there's an omission as well. I wonder if you can spot the brand that you would expect to see in there. So number 10 of the top performing brands, according to Auto Express, is Land Rover. Number 9, Jaguar. Number 8, Toyota. Number 7, Mazda. Number 6, Peugeot. Number 5, Citroën. Number 4, Porsche. Number 3, Kia. number 2 Tesla, and number 1 Subaru, scoring 90.66% out of 100. So amazing showing there for Subaru.
Yeah, no BMW I see in the top 10.
Yeah, no BMW and no Suzuki, because we often see Suzuki rated very highly in anything to do with either consumer polls or dealer polls. I haven't got sight of the top 20, but I should imagine they would be somewhere just outside of the top 10.
Just nudged outside that top 10. Because the scoring is reasonably close. I mean, you've got, as you said there, Curtis Subaru at 90.66, but Land Rover who's in 10th position at 87.63. So a fairly marginal scoring there between the number 1 and the 10th position. So you suspect there'll be a few that'll probably just fallen outside of that top 10.
And as you alluded to, Tesla at number 2 with 90.55%, which suggests to me that Tesla owners are possibly happier now than they've been in the past in terms of living with their cars.
Yeah. And in terms of the worst, then let's do our top 10 for the worst problems. You say there earlier, Curtis, that spoiler that MG will last.
Yeah, so number 10 we've got Skoda, number 9 Seat, number 8 Mercedes, number 7 Vauxhall, number 6 Audi, number 5 Renault, number 4 Volkswagen, number 3 Ford, number 2 Fiat, and as we've already said, number 1 is MG with 82.01%.
Yeah, it's seeing some of those VAG, your Audi, your Volkswagen, your Seat, your Skoda, in that bottom 10 is quite a shocker, really, if you look at it. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, somebody's got to be in the top 10 and somebody's got to be in the bottom 10 by default. So, very interesting.
And MG will be bitterly disappointed by that, and certainly within the report, it says that MG performed poorly in across a number of categories, and actually came 31st for interior practicality and boot space, as well as infotainment. So that's really where it lost a lot of points amongst owners.
Yeah, what a shame. But I say, do check out that full press release there in Car Deal if you want to look at it in any more detail. But busy week that we've got there. So as I say, the market view, the motors market view, always go and check out that. There's a lot of detail in that report. Very worthwhile having a look at and give you sort of insight into what's in demand, what's not in demand, and how how the market's playing out between the franchise, independent, and the supermarkets there. And just a reminder of the dates. As I say, the British Motor Show between the 15th and 18th of August down at Farnborough International Exhibition Centre, sponsored by our sponsor Motors, and it'll be in that dedicated dealer showcase zone. So if you are heading down there, make sure you check out that showcase. And finally, do get any entries in for this year's Motor Trader Awards. You've got until Friday the 16th of August to get those in now if you want to get nominated for any of their awards this year.
We've covered a lot of ground this week, haven't we, Phil?
We have, but we've got the new car figures and the used car figures at the same time. So there's a lot to cover this week.
But that is all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Do catch up on that Perran Moon interview that will be in your podcast feed. But until next weekend, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.